The Tim Heale Podcast's Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast. In this episode, we're going to have a chat with Jaz. Jaz is going to tell us all about his life. So, Jaz, if you can tell me where and when you were born, and if you can describe what it was like where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received. So, over to you.
Thanks so much for having me, Tim. Born and raised here in Toronto, Canada. Born in 1981, 40 years old as I speak to you now.
And 41, surely.
Well, shortly. I'm not there yet, Tim. I'm not there yet. Don't start aging me already, brother. But in really born, like specifically in the most northern part of Toronto, in an area called Rexdale, which till this day has a negative stigma towards it, really because of not really having a lot of people to look up to in an area like that. We all have that in urban parts of major cities, and Rexdale was really no different, right? You when you went to the corners, you generally knew what was happening there, and it wasn't good stuff. But luckily for myself, personally, I was quite sheltered from that because of my upbringing and what my parents and my two older brothers did. They just made sure that they kept me away from it to the best of like their ability. I still got into some trouble, but nothing too bad. I still tell people till this day and age, and to everyone who's listening and watching right now, like if you can make sure that you just stay away from, like in that age group of like 16 to 23, 24, if you can just stay away from doing something very bad that puts you into jail, then hopefully you can, surround yourself with some positive mentors and really have like a positive result in that sense. But kind of going back to my upbringing, right through kindergarten, middle school, and high school, I spent all those years in that same area in Rexdale. I didn't go to school after high school, only because I realized very quickly that really wasn't the setting for me. Not to say that formal education, that there's anything wrong with it. I think we obviously need it. We need our doctors, lawyers, engineers, and so on and so forth. But for me, I realized really quickly, probably like as early as grade 6, grade 7 is when it really came apparent to me that I wasn't going to be someone that was going to be going to university and getting a degree, because I just didn't have the, for lack of a better word, longevity with it, right? Like I wasn't going to be able to stick to studying in that format. But as I look back, I don't live in Rexdale anymore right now, but as I look back, it was definitely formidable years for me, because it made me the man that I am now.
So let's have a look at your middle school then. So obviously you've come up from the kindergarten. Was the school all in the same building, or was it different schools? So the kindergarten was different to the middle school, to the junior high?
Yeah, so here in Canada, we call kind of middle school grade 6 to grade 8. And so I went to one school right up until grade 6, and then I made a move into another part of the same area in Rexdale, which then made me go to a different school. And that school was probably, look, I mean, right now I have friends that I still speak to and hang out with on a regular basis, whatever regular basis might mean to people, like on a monthly basis. We're still very close, but that's where that grade 6 to grade 8, that middle school time, was probably where I got the worst grades. As I mentioned earlier, that's when I really realized that I wasn't going to be in the school setting past high school. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that there was just so many ways to get into trouble. Like luckily I like sports, so that kind of kept me out of some of that trouble. My parents, my brothers, as I mentioned, but in that part of Rexdale, it's just a rougher area. And there's just so many more ways of getting into trouble. But as I mentioned, and I always will say, I mean, in fact, one part of my logo is actually it's written out where it says established in Rexdale, because it had such a profound effect on my life because of the diversity. You know, I have friends who are close friends who are Chinese and white and black and Sri Lankan, Indian. So like we were real, like I was really able to get a better understanding of their cultures, and just as simple as their foods, but just to see how they were also brought up, right? Like a lot of my close friends didn't come from a household that had a father and mother. Most of them were raised in single mother situations, and again, I mean that put me anyways into gratefulness very, very quickly because I had a father, I had a mother. I got to see them every single day. I got kissed by them every single day, told that I was loved by them every single day. My brothers told me they loved me, but in a slightly different way, a little bit more physical. And two older brothers is always a healthy reminder that you're closer to the bottom than you are to the top. But just seeing how some of my friends grew up and even their actual homes. I grew up in homes my whole life where they grew up in apartment buildings and rough rough shaped apartment buildings, right? And so
the area that you grew up in was pretty diverse. I mean, lots and lots of different ethnic backgrounds lived in the same area. Did that bring along its own issues, or was it just not an issue?
Look, I think it definitely brought on some issues because you had your little cliques, right? The black people hung around with a lot of black people. Indians hung around with Indians. White people hung around with white people. Even in school, you saw it, right? Like they would hang in one area of the cafeteria. Some would hang out outside in the smoking section, whatever it was, right? But for me, I always saw it as a positive because maybe it's just my part of my DNA. It's obviously served me very well in my adult life. I kind of got along with all the groups, right? Like I think if you go back and you were to talk to some of the people in my middle school and definitely in my high school, they would tell you, yeah, like Jaz was hanging out with us on a Monday, hanging out with us on a Wednesday and a Tuesday. Like I was probably in all the different cliques. I was also a sports guy, right? So playing soccer, basketball, and being on the football team, you kind of get to know people on a deeper level. Yeah. It's not just about what you see in them in like see of them in classrooms. You see them in different settings as well.
So you mentioned the sports. So the football, I guess that's the American type football.
I played both. I was actually probably a lot better in the English football, though.
Yeah, let's not talk about that pansy game. so look at the American football. So what position was you played on there?
I played receiver and defensive back, which is always fun because as the receiver, you're on the offensive side, but as a defensive back, you're covering the receiver on the defensive side. So I kind of had a natural talent in being what you would call a ball hawk in American football. I always wanted to kind of find myself as close as possible to the football. However, I wasn't big enough and strong enough probably to take the beating that a running back does, and that's the person that after the quarterback says I probably wasn't strong enough to take that kind of beating, and I just never liked getting hit that much. And so
you're a bit more like a Jerry Rice, were you? Sort of
well, look,
down the outside and catch the Hail Marys.
I love the name that you said, but personally, I was never a fan of him. I do give him his respect and his kudos. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, so the one team and the one player,
so Coach Landry and Roger Staubach.
Now you're talking, my people.
That's way before your time, obviously.
It is, but I know the history really well. But I'm a Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, Deion Sanders kind of guy. Yeah. But if you mention Jerry Rice and the San Francisco 49ers, it doesn't go real well in my household.
Well, just the first name that sprung to mind.
Hey, but he is by far one of the best football players of all time. I will give him his due respect.
Yeah, he could catch a ball or two. Mind you, if he was half decent defensive back, then you could stuff him occasionally.
I know. Well, Deion Sanders was definitely a special person because he played He played receiver and defensive back, and he was actually one of the guys, like I had a poster on my wall of, and then he was so athletic that he's one of the only few people other than Bo Jackson that was able to cross over into baseball as well and play both at a high level. In fact, he had a back-to-back playoff game in baseball and football, right after each other, which is the only person to ever do it in sports.
That's an achievement in itself.
100%, yes.
So which position did you play in the defensive backs then?
Well, defensive back, that played actually cornerback, like exactly the position that Deion
Right.
played. Yeah, the exact position that he played.
I was an outside linebacker.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what?
You stepped up the defensive end.
You look like an outside linebacker. I wouldn't want to take a hit from you either, Tim.
I had one particular game where I was so outclassed everybody else on the pitch, and I had about 7 sacks that particular day, and I really felt sorry for the poor quarterback.
Hey,
I hit him in the numbers so many times.
Those are Lawrence Taylor numbers, man. Good job. Congrats.
Mind you, when I played rugby, people got their own back on me. I was a scrum half, so I used to put the ball into the scrum, and what they did with it, I'm not quite sure. But when it spat out, I managed to get hold of it again and give it out to the number 10 or give it on to one of the forwards, let them run with it. But,
it's the one sport that I never even I didn't even play for fun. Let me ask you a quick question in regard to that, because you played both. Is it a lot more physical, like because you don't have the equipment on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, with American football, I mean, it's great. You've got all the pads on and the helmet, and you could probably go in a bit harder than you would without it on, but you get a lot more time to rest in American football. Whereas rugby, I mean, if you're on for 80 minutes, you're running around for 80 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, from your vantage point, man, that's real interesting, because with American football, you're going like at 10 out of 10 speed because you know you have the equipment on. Where in rugby, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you're gonna probably slow down a little bit at the end, knowing that you don't have the equipment, the other gentleman doesn't have the equipment. But like, you could have just played football last week, American football, and like, you know what I mean? Like, how was all that?
You don't slow down.
Got it.
It's just a different technique.
Got it.
Whereas American football, you're leading with your head.
Yeah, true.
With rugby, you're leading in with your shoulders.
Yeah, I got it.
And you make sure you get your head on the right side, because if you don't, it hurts.
Yeah, I mean, big respect to these rugby players, man. The amount of beating they take as well in a game.
Yeah. But I mean, particularly the professional game nowadays. I mean, some of these guys, I mean, they are brick outhouses. And I mean, I wouldn't be able to play them.
Oh, that New Zealand, the All Blacks team scares the crap out of me.
No, they're just little boys compared to the England rugby team, obviously.
Hey, good, I hit a chord. That's exactly what I was trying to do.
So, I mean, up in the north of Canada, there, I guess you get a bit of a cool winter.
Yeah.
So, did you play a bit of ice hockey?
No, I didn't. You know, it's just that's one of those sports that it just costs a little bit more money, right? And then compared to, I mean, English football, it's nothing, right? You got some cleats and you get some shin pads and a ball, and you're good to go. You don't even need nets. You can make nets with water bottles, right? And so, we're
you can fall around and pretend that you're injured all the time.
Well, okay, all right. Now I get why you think it's such a fancy sport. I get it.
Of course, you know the difference between it football and rugby.
What's that?
A football player will run around for 90 minutes and pretend that he's injured. A rugby player will run around for 80 minutes pretending that he's not.
Yeah, I like that. Hey, you know what? It's actually it's funny because we actually think of hockey players like that too. I think one of the most, you think it would be football players, but man, some of these hockey players, like I've seen, you know, you're watching a game and they get their teeth knocked out. You think they're done they're done. They go back, they get a couple of stitches, and then they're back. I mean, there was a guy who literally the report came out yesterday. He's been playing with a broken thumb for the last 2 weeks. And only now, because the coach actually found out, they didn't even know, he could not lift the stick anymore. That's the only reason he went out of the, like, I mean, hockey players are definitely a breed of their own. But I just never really got into it. Can I skate? Yeah, I can kind of skate, but not like, I can't, I'm not a really, like, really good skater by any means. It's more for leisure, but I just never got into the game. It was, like I said, it was a little bit more expensive. It was a lot easier for my parents to put the three sons into soccer. And that's kind of the game that we played since we were 4 years old, right up until like 19, 20, 21. But hockey was just not something that we really took to on the ice. One thing that you always did here, being in Toronto specifically, but right across the country, I don't know a person that's born in this country that didn't play, like, grow up playing street hockey. I mean, it's just right to the boys, the girls, everyone played street hockey right until the lights went out. However, that's changed. Like, I would say in the last 5 to 7 years, you don't really see a lot of hockey nets out there anymore. What you're seeing is a lot of basketball nets. And I think one of the main reasons is a player came to our team back in the early 2000s by the name of Vince Carter. And he transitioned a lot of the kids to playing into basketball. He also transcended the way that the game was played. He actually put Toronto on the map when it comes to basketball. And then we were lucky enough 3 years ago to win the NBA championship. And that just now, I mean, you drive in any suburb in Toronto here, and I'm going to say almost every other home has a basketball net. Yeah, they're all dribbling about, have a basketball net. Where when I grew up, it was always hockey nets, right? And then and the cool thing with that is that you generally you had one street playing, and then you had another street playing, and then you would at one point on the weekends just say, okay, guys, let's play each other now. So it's Street X playing against Street Y, and that was always cool, right? But now it's kind of interesting to see basketball, but a lot more basketball nets. But I do miss the hockey nets, that's for sure.
Yeah, and shouting "Game on" when a car comes.
Yeah. Well, that's everyone knows that. Everyone knows that, and you don't hear that with basketball because the nets are on people's driveways, right? Where with hockey, you have to play it on the road.
So let's have a look at your junior high school then. So you moved up from middle school to junior high, and that's kind of when you realised that it wasn't quite for you. So what did you do?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think as I mentioned, I started to get that feeling grade 6, grade 7, grade 9, grade 10. It went on steroids for me, where I knew, okay, like I'm gonna do whatever I have to do to pass. I'll get my high school diploma, but there's not going to be a college or university that's going to be calling me, begging me to come to their school. I knew that. I also I just didn't enjoy it. That's all. I probably knew that I had some type of talent because back when I was 12 and 13, I started delivering newspapers, and even in high school, I got this co-op placement at a retail store selling shoes to sprinters and marathon runners. And that's when I knew, like, wow, I actually like this. I enjoy this a lot more. Like, I was actually excited to deliver newspapers. In high school, I was excited to go to that one class that I just had to quickly sign in at, and then I would go to the store, jump on the bus and go to the store, and then they hired me. Like, I found my passion. I didn't know that word at that time by any means, but I knew that there was something about the retail setting, meeting people, selling stuff, asking questions, uncovering needs and wants and all that. I knew that I really enjoyed it, and there just wasn't anything offered in any type of university or college that was going to give me that feeling. And when you're not excited about something, I think it's tough to do very well at it, right? Unless you're just one of the, like, I have some friends who they never needed to study, and they could go hungover. They were at the bar with me the night before, or we were drinking, and they would go into class and ace that test. Where for me to do that, I would have to have studied for weeks. and probably got a tutor. Like none of that stuff came easy for me, right? Even till this day, like a lot of the words I'm speaking to you now, if you ask me to spell half of them, it's going to take me a little while, right? And I've probably used certain words out of context already, right? But I think people give me the benefit of the doubt, at least the ones that like me, because there's some type of connection, because there's more to there's more to communicating than just writing, right? And so that's where I think I found my knack. And the high school that I went to, still in the most southern part of kind of Rexdale, that's where the multiculturalism of Toronto was like coming to its peak, where you now had a little Jamaica in Toronto, you had a little India, you had everyone kind of has a Chinatown, right? But now you started to notice people coming from all over the world. You had people coming from Morocco, you had people coming from Iran, and you're starting to like really get an understanding of, again, how they grew up, but just like their foods. I always take it back to food. As you can tell, I like food, but it's something for everyone to talk about, right? And it's a great conversation piece. And I think Toronto, probably other than New York, is by far the best when it comes to multiculturalism and everything that it has to offer. And that really, again, helped me, because till this day, as I mentioned earlier, I got not just friends and acquaintances, I got best friends of mine that are from all different cultures. And again, like it allows me to connect with people outside of that group a lot easier, because I can say, well, one of my best friends is from Hong Kong. Well, one of my best friends is from Amsterdam. One of my best friends is from Iran. Like it's just, you can connect with people a lot easier, right?
Yeah. Wow. So, did you graduate?
From high school? Yes.
Yeah.
That's all.
You got that bit of paper.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I got that. I needed to make sure I finished that and got that. But other than that, like I didn't even apply to a college or university, because I wasn't sure. Like I'm sure I could have probably got it to some type of community college, but there wasn't a university that was going to take me. I couldn't see that happening.
So what did you do after high school then?
So for the first 2 months, I actually went back in that summer year. I went back to that retail store that I was at. They gave me like a full-time placement, and I knew I wasn't going to be there for a very long time, but I did know that I wanted to be kind of in a retail setting, and just call it serendipity, luck again. I got a job at one of the, here in Canada, we have 5 to 6 major banks. I got a job at one of the major banks as a sales and service specialist on the telephone. So it's like telephone banking. So if, Tim, you wanted to, like when you wanted to pay some bills, transfer some money, I would be the guy that was picking up the phone and helping you through that, kind of like a teller on the phone. But then I also had to add some type of value to that call. And it's something small, but it again serves me very well now, that I had to let you know about a product or service that the bank offered at that time. A. B, I had to try to let you know about that mortgages and lines of credits and loans and stuff that you could, Tim, do on the phone. I can make it easier for you. And then the number one thing that job taught me, and I was there for 3 years, is telephone etiquette. That as a 40-year-old now, there's very few people in the world, and I'm not being cocky, call it maybe overconfident, that really can come close to me when it comes to being on the phone. You know, one thing and I love the millennials. I hire a lot of them. Like, I mean, the later millennials, I think I'm still a millennial in that sense, but I think the younger generation, my 18, 19, 22, 24-year-old staff members, nephews and nieces, they have, like, I think they think dialing a phone number is poison. To get any of my 23-year-old people to pick up the phone and dial someone, I think they think there's a cancer to it. There's some type of STD on the phone. I have no idea what goes on in their mind, but that's why they don't really get a lot of shit done. You know what I mean? So, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm really speaking to the people that are listening and watching, and the ones around me. Because the one thing that being on the phones taught me is I'm not scared to call anyone, so I can ask for a lot of things. And speed in business is very important. So while you text someone and email them and then wait for a response, I probably can go outbound to 17 people in that same time period. And I'm okay with getting the 16 no's because I know that yes is coming, while most people are still waiting for somebody to text them back and email them back. I think the worst thing that I hate hearing is I'm waiting for the email. I emailed them. I'm just waiting for them to hit me back. It's like, what? Did you pick up the phone and at least try to call them? So like, so you know what I'm saying?
That's on a text or something like that.
Exactly. And then you're sitting and waiting. Look, you want to text your friend, go ahead. But in business and in work, you got to pick up the phone, call people. In fact, the best thing to do is pick up the phone, call people, and set up a time where you can see them face to face. And then that's the stuff that I learned just like while I was growing up, right? And the bank taught me etiquette that, I owe so much to the training that bank gave me. It wasn't like one of them 3 week trainings. I mean, that was like a year where they really, because everything was done on the phone. It wasn't like how you walk into a bank right now and you speak to a teller. So you needed to understand that when you put somebody on hold, you ask. And you say, Mr. Heale, is it okay if I address you by your first name? Yes, thank you, Tim. Do you mind if I put you on hold? Awesome. And then you come back on that phone and you say, thank you for holding. You respect someone and you respect their time. Now, does that always get me a sale? Does that always wow someone? No, but I can tell you 77% of the time it does.
Yeah. And it's I think if you build up a rapport, first before you start doing the hard sell bit, then if you build a relationship with the person at the other end of the phone, you're going to get the results.
I think so, right? And people can tell when you're smiling on the phone.
Absolutely.
You can tell when you call somebody in customer service. You can tell if they're having a garbage day, right? Or like something's bothering them. You can also tell when they're bubbly and they're positive and they're excited and right. And you like that gets transferred to other people, right? And people ask me, why do you think you're so good at sales? And what is it, sales and all that? Sales at the end of the day is just a transfer of emotion. That's all. There's going to be an influencer. There's going to be an influencee, right? As a salesperson, you got to decide who's going to be what.
And I think it's understanding that person at the other end of the blower. That's the key. And gauging how they're going to take the response.
What did you just call the phone? A blower?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to
use that blower. I'm going to use that one. I just learned something new. I told you, I got a lot of family from England. I've never heard that one. I've heard wah, but I've never heard blower. So I'm going to use that one.
Yeah, get on the blower.
There you go. All right. Right.
And that comes from on the Navy ships because they used to blow down to the engine room.
I like it. All right. Leave it to the English. I love it.
Well, we invented the language, didn't we?
There you go.
So where did you move on from the bank then? So you're 3 years in the bank, got a good grounding in sales. So
I actually thought I was going to be, when I was at the bank, I mean, funny enough, right? In other pieces of content and podcasts that I do this, I always tell people that I thought I was going to be selling newspapers for the rest of my life when I was 12, and I really did. When I sold shoes, I thought I was going to be in that setting for a long time, a lot longer than the 3 years that I was with. When I was at the bank, I thought I was going to be there for the rest of my life because I really enjoyed all the places that I went to. I didn't really veer off into other industries. I had some part-time gigs at a banquet hall, part-time gigs at a restaurant and a warehouse and stuff like that. But my major stints were at retail, sales, and service kind of places. At the bank, that's where I was like, this is it. Like I'm 18 years old, 19 years old at that time, and I have a salary of $33,500. And that was amazing to me. I'm 19 years old and have a salary of $33,000. I'm like, I'm blown out of my mind here. I live with my parents. I had a phone bill of $87 a month or something like that, and everything. Right now, I was also a saver as well, but I also had some good disposable income. But what started to happen when I hit the 3-year mark, I asked to be moved, promoted, different position, higher position, like where I think I could start to train some of the other people that were coming into my role because I was doing so well on the phones. I took to that, like I owned it. Like I thought I was like, I'm part of this. The logo's a red bank, and we call it the red bank here. I thought like I bleed this red bank, please, like let me stay here. But they wouldn't move me because I didn't have anything other than that high school diploma. So that's where not having some type of degree or I guess it's called post-secondary. I didn't because I didn't have anything on paper, they weren't willing to move me. So they said, you got to stay where you are. Now, also looking back, I'm sure a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was really good in that sales position there, selling those loans and mortgages and lines of credit. So they didn't want to get me off the phones either. But I knew I just wanted more. And so I got a connection made from my elder brother, my eldest brother, to a gentleman who owned like 4 or 5 car dealerships. And I was not one of the boys that had a Lamborghini Countach or a Ferrari or any of those car posters in my room. I was never a car guy. I had no clue the difference between a 4-cylinder and a 6-cylinder. No affinity to cars whatsoever. But they mentioned to me that there's a possibility of being a salesperson. And I was like, well, I can't sell something I don't really know. Why don't I go and start working in their detail shop? I'll clean cars, like I'll wash the cars, I'll wax them and all that kind of stuff. And maybe I'll start to get to know them, like know the cars better. So I went, sat down with the owner. I remember this like it was yesterday. He's like, so what do you want to do? I was like, well, really, one day I'm hoping to sit in your position. I don't even know what the heck you do as an owner or anything. I'm 21 at this time, exactly 21. But I do want to sit in your position one day, but I don't know anything about cars. And he started asking me questions, what I was doing. And I told him about the bank and all that. He's like, buddy, don't worry about the cars. Like you'll get to know them. And as you get questions from customers, don't ever lie to them. Just tell them you're going to find out the answer. So when a customer says to you, is this a 4-cylinder and a 6-cylinder, and you don't know the answer, that's okay. If somebody says, how do the pistons work in a car? Don't worry, take them to the mechanic. And so he started to really just let me know that, and he believed in me for whatever reason, more than I believed in myself at that time. And so that's why I always speak about the importance of surrounding yourself around people that have done what you wanted to do because they've been there before you. And so they, can make sure you don't hit your head against the wall. But I think the most important part of that is they'll believe in you more than you believe in yourself, right? And so I think that's very important. And so he put me in the used car section. I eventually went into the new cars, but he put me in the used car section. And again, call it serendipity, call it luck. First 2 days that I was there, I sold a car out of sheer luck. The person came in and said, I want that car that's sitting on the lot. They didn't ask me anything. I couldn't negotiate myself out of a telephone booth. It didn't really, like I couldn't do much. But he said, you know what, Jaz, the customer actually liked you. They said that you weren't pushy or anything. Come up into new cars. And in new cars, it was one brand in England. It's called Honda, but here we have an American upgraded version of it. It's called Acura, but you guys call it Honda, I believe, still there.
Yeah,
they had 6 cars, and they had brochures, and the brochures were probably 15 pages each. And out of the 15, four of them, 6 of them were just pictures. But what I did is I took those 6 car brochures home and I studied them like it was like I was going to get tested for a university degree. I still, 22 years removed, I can tell you from a 2004 car model to a 2007 model, I can tell you everything there is to know about those 6 cars, the horsepower, the torque. I can tell you how much it weighed because what I did is what I could only do at that time, which is memorize everything. So when someone said, what's the horsepower on an Acura TL? I knew it was 226 horsepower, right? Because they were just asking basic questions, right? And so what I did is I just immersed myself into everything about Acuras, but then I took it one step further. I started to immerse myself into the car industry in itself. I went to all the auto shows. I subscribed to all the magazines. There were $5, $8 a month subscriptions to Car and Driver and Motor Trend, the two biggest car magazines. I made sure I got all those. I understood that when you're looking at an Acura TL, which is kind of the family sedan, which is one of the most popular ones that they sell, I knew all the good things about the competitors and all the bad things about the competitors. I went into the showrooms of the competitors and acted as a customer to see what other car salesmen and car saleswomen do very well and what they don't do well at. And after 3 years of doing that and really understanding it, I hit another wall. Where I said to myself, look, I mean, I looked around and these people are still there, a lot of them, amazing people at that dealership, but they were there at that point for 18, 19, 20 years. And I can tell that they've hit a ceiling from an income perspective. And I just didn't feel challenged anymore. And I needed to go to really what I call the biggest ticket item that the average person is going to make. And that's going to be a piece of real estate. And I wanted to conquer that, for a lack of a better word. And that's when I got into real estate 17 years ago.
And you're still in it?
Still in it. Still
Have you
in
hit
it.
Ceiling yet?
Sorry, say that again?
Have you hit your ceiling yet?
No, now,
run into the wall?
Now, obviously a little older where I can find other opportunities within it. And to answer your question, maybe I wasn't fully honest. I think I didn't hit a ceiling 2 years ago. I think I hit boredom 2 years ago, where it was kind of the same thing over and over again. And I didn't know what it was till I started to talk to the 4 people that are closest with me, that in terms of my work family, that spend a lot of time with me. And I said, I just want to do something different. Like I want something else. And what happened is and what we uncovered was I needed to teach someone now. Like I needed to give this knowledge to, not just through podcasts and videos, but I needed someone like directly under me that I can mold. Something like what that gentleman at the car dealership did with me, because he really took me and molded me. And I was very open to the coaching. I needed someone like that. And the other 2-3 people that were very close to me, they were becoming leaders themselves. And I think they it was a different time in their life as well. But then a kid came to me, and he was the one that had this natural raw talent. When someone says to you, like, oh, I see myself in him, I truly saw myself in this guy. And he's still with me. He's actually just outside the studio right now. And he was really the ticket for me to keep this going. He kept that fire burning, because now I could really see is this talent and this skill. And for anybody who's been listening and watching this long, like, they might be thinking this guy's like full of himself. I truly am not. Like, I suck, Tim, and listeners and viewers, at 98% of things. But there's that 2% that I'm really, really good at. The 90, so I want people to understand, I suck at most things. I really needed to see, could I actually teach someone this skill, this talent? And that's the process I'm in right now. And then a year ago, one of my VPs in my real estate organization came to me, and she was being asked a lot in and around this office about how she herself, along with me, produced so much content, like videos, audio, and all that kind of stuff. And people wanted to start paying us to do it for them. And so we said, why don't we start another business? And so I'm proud to say we hit our 1-year anniversary a couple of weeks ago. We have a little over 25, 26 real estate agents and mortgage brokers ask us for help in terms of producing content. And that I probably won't get bored of or hit a ceiling for another 17 years, because it's so damn hard. It's so challenging to get people to put themselves on camera and be themselves And I don't know like how you did it yourself, but I mean, you're a natural at it, obviously. I feel like I was a natural at it. My business partner, the VP, Laura, she's a natural at it. But to get others to do it, it's such a challenge, and it keeps me up at night. And we have some amazing days where like it's like, oh my God, this shit is so easy. I'm hitting like on all cylinders. But damn, you got days sometimes in this business, in the media business, where it's like you can't, you just can't get anything right. You can't get anything right. And so I love that. I really, really enjoy that because I know how it felt for, and it wasn't long that I felt that boredom 2 years ago, but it was long enough. It was like a good 10 days, 10 days. And then to most people, that's not going to sound like a lot, or maybe to a lot of people, it sounds like a lot. I'm not sure. But for me, it was a lot. I'm such a positive guy. I'm very happy majority of the time that 10 days of like, not knowing myself and not knowing what's bothering me, that felt like an eternity. And I know that I now know that with this media company, the challenge is where I want to live in, because once you figure that out, now I'm going to start off at boredom again.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us up to date, doesn't it?
It does. I brought you up to like literally the last minute, just before you and I got on this. In fact, for the viewers and listeners, I mean, Tim and I just had some issues even getting connected, and it was all on my part and my fault. And I have a team, and we were just laughing off air saying that, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Like, it's not about the amount of times that you get punched and you get knocked down. It really matters on the amount of times that you get back up again.
Absolutely. Well, Jas, that's tremendous.
Thank
so you're
you.
doing well for yourself.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I got and it really started. I won the lottery with the family that I was born in. And then as I grew up, I had some really cool friends, and as I mentioned, still hang out with them. I got a family of my own. And then I got this work family that, they're not, I'm sure, always enamored by me and want to hear my voice all the time, but they know my heart's in the right place, and we keep just chugging along. Majority of the time we fail. Like, and if there's anything that I would want to get across to your listeners and viewers, to answer your question, I guess, like, I never really stop and tell myself I'm successful, but I guess enough people are starting to tell me, and not that I ever let that stuff get to my head, but I also know where I came from, right? And so I know that I have a lot more than I ever have. But it really comes down to the people that are around me. Like, I'm just lucky enough to do this on camera with people, and you get to see my face, but if you got to see the people's shoulders that I'm getting to stand on, it's why I'm able to see so far now.
That's brilliant.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.